Hey guys, welcome to my channel at Yabonga Tambekwayo. I want to talk about like a really, interesting topic for me, which is, it's like, to be honest, it has been bothering me for like quite some time, like the matter of Chris Hani. Because for me, Chris Hani is like the greatest freedom fighter in South Africa, like there's no one who's like, I feel like he's the greatest freedom fighter in South Africa. And like the thing is that with Chris Hani, we like, obviously it's tempting to say that yes, we know why he was killed, but in my view, like, I don't think that like the reason is satisfying. Because like the thing is that with Chris Hani, I think that they may have like wanted to kill him for three reasons. One is because he was a communist, he had communist beliefs. The second one is that because he is like, like they viewed Umkhonto weSizwe as a terrorist group. In other words, since Chris Hani was like one of the leaders in Umkhonto weSizwe, they feel like, and of course he was like a top leader, they feel like Chris Hani is like a person who is violent, like a person who resorts to violence as a means of like solving problems. Of course, the problem was the apartheid government, and the apartheid government felt like he was like, promoting violence. He was a threat to the system. The third one is because like he had like massive support, like in South Africa, and so like they felt like by taking him out, they would crush the momentum of the ANC. So like the thing is that for me, I really don't know why they killed Chris Hani, because I feel like the reason why they killed him is not, again, as I said, satisfying. Because if you look at Chris Hani's, like, if you look at videos of Chris Hani where he's speaking, the thing is that on YouTube there's not, well, I have not seen a lot of videos on Chris Hani. And of course you can imagine Chris Hani back in the time, in the 1960s, 50s, further into the 1970s and 80s, like there was no internet, there was no phone where you can record, like people, like at any time. So there are not many interviews of Chris Hani, but like if you watch like whatever interview you get, you'll hear him say where he says like there's another interview where he was at a national press club at the USA, where he was asked by, I think it was a South African journalist, what kind of government, like what kind of economic system would you put in place in South Africa? Would it be like capitalism, mixed economy, or a communist economy? So they asked him that question, and Chris Hani made it clear that he, even though like he was in the South African Communist Party, he made it clear that when the ANC government, takes control, there will be no seizing of people's property, private property, and there would be no, trivial, collection of like people's assets or land. The government won't take people's land and things like that. And like he made it clear that what he's talking about, as the ANC, what they are talking about when they're saying that, things must be redistributed. What he's saying that people like must, like, like black people and white people must get at least 3 meals a day, proper toilets, proper sanitary conditions, proper education, things like that. And that's what he said in that interview, like, because I think that, like the best the best way to know what Chris Hani was saying and thinking is to just watch his interviews, because there you'll hear from the horse's mouth. You'll hear from him directly. So like he was saying that yes, even though they are part of like communist uh, conception or part of the communist group, you know, the the SACP, South African Communist Party, they still like, they are for like a capital system. They are for having a private sector that provides jobs and things like that. Because what Chris Hani was saying in that press conference is that when he referred to capitalism, like when he referred to the problem with capitalism, he was saying that companies were not treating black people properly. And you can imagine it was apartheid. You know, people were, black people in particular, they were not treated equally. So what he was saying in addressing, you know, capitalism, he was saying that, and he gave an example using Anglo-American in that interview, where he was saying Anglo-American was not treating the people nicely, you know, like the black people nicely. He even said that the houses that they built, you know, for the miners, because Anglo-American is a mining company. So what he was saying that the houses that they built for black people on that mining site was not fit for animals. In other words, the capitalism was not treating people fairly. And he made it clear that they cannot live, you know, regulation of how people are going to be treated to capitalism only. Government has to intervene. There has to be a clear like player who can regulate both the people and the capitalism so that it can all flow. And obviously that player is the government. So what you are saying is that yes, there will be a mixed system in South Africa, but there will be an equal freedom of private property, capitalism, entrepreneurship, things like that, that have to do with business and trade. It will all be fair, but the redistribution will have to be done in a sense that all people must be given proper services. It was a redistribution that accounted for social rights and not for, you know, collecting private property. Because as he was saying in that interview, he said that the ANC is only focused on like the most important issues of the country and not like just, you know, like a way of like tracking and hunting down people who have a lot of land and things like that. So now what does that have to do with the murder of Chris Hani? Well, it has everything to do with the murder of Chris Hani, because especially if you like have studied history and things like that, you'll understand that one of the reasons why they killed Chris Hani, as I've said, it was because he was a communist. Now, I don't understand why you would kill him even after he made it clear that they have no intention of like seizing private property, because that's the heart of communism. That's the point of communism, right? It's like the crux of the situation whereby you say, if you're a communist government, like especially back then, you know, in the 20th century, it was like just taking private property and making it, you know, government property, you know, state property and all of that. So like, I really don't understand why they would assassinate him, even after he made it clear. And it's not like that press conference was like not global. It was a global press conference. It was in the United States after all. So, and you can imagine the media was like, the United States media is always buzzing. Everything goes viral in the United States media. So you know, like, maybe someone can help me in the comment section and say like, but like, also another reason, as I've said, was because they killed him because he was, or they viewed him as a violent person, and the Umkhonto we Sizwe, they viewed him as a violent group. Now, obviously, Umkhonto we Sizwe, like, they had to defend themselves against the apartheid government. And the issue is that the apartheid government was not kind to these people. In fact, that word kind is like an understatement. They treated, our people horribly, like they killed these people, black people, protesters, and they even exiled, like political parties, political members, freedom fighters. And you can imagine the humiliation. I mean, you are trying to fight for freedom in your country, and then you get sent out, go to another country, go suffer somewhere. I mean, that's like humiliation at its highest. So, and of course, people were being murdered. So, like, people in the ANC began to say to themselves, well, we have been peaceful for over a long time. It's now time to arm ourselves. The thing is that the Umkhonto we Sizwe and the ANC, they were like, they have said, like, they made it clear that, they want to be peaceful. It's just that they reached a stage where they felt like the killing was a lot. You can think about the June 16 event in 1973 in Soweto, the murder of those school children. So events like that, and other events too that were not recorded or not on record, by the media, South African media, because there was a lot of violence in apartheid. All of that violence accumulated, and it came to a point where people could not stand it. They had enough. So the ANC formed Umkhonto we Sizwe, and they wanted to neutralize the apartheid government, attacking their, like, important buildings, offices, and things like that. But they made it clear, even O.R. Tambo made it clear in a press conference that he gave at the National Press, also in the United States, that Umkhonto we Sizwe was violent against, the objects of apartheid government, not against people, not against civilians. But whereas the apartheid government did not consider, like, black people as civilians. In fact, they shot them at will. So people had to arm themselves. And so as a consequence, obviously, Chris Hani was a leader in Umkhonto we Sizwe. He was the chief of staff in Umkhonto we Sizwe. He was on the field, fighting. I think he was also, fighting, Umkhonto we Sizwe, they were fighting in, I think it was Zambezia. Let me just check real quick. So Chris Hani fought in, like, the Wenki campaign in Rhodesia, obviously now called Zimbabwe. So, like, but basically the point is that he was on the field, he was not like a political leader on the podium only. He was also on the field fighting. And of course, you can research for yourself these things. But, like, the point is that they resorted to violence only because they had to, not because they wanted to. So I think that it wouldn't be a fair accusation to say that Chris Hani was a violent person solely because he just wants to be violent. I think that the conditions and the circumstances led not only Umkhonto we Sizwe or ANC, but just like the people of South Africa in general, to be violent. So the third reason was that he was gaining support, from South Africans. Obviously, that was true. The apartheid government wanted to, like, crush the momentum of the ANC. And you can imagine, at that time, it was Chris Hani, Oliver Tambo, and Nelson Mandela. Those three people, individually on their own, they are prominent people. So combined, they bring in a lot of force, like a lot of support and influence, and they gain a lot of support from the South Africans. So the apartheid government realized that, and they decided to take. Initially, I think they wanted to kill, like Nelson Mandela first, and then I think Chris Hani was third or second. There is a list that Walush, I hope I'm pronouncing that person's name properly. The person who assassinated Chris Hani. They said he had a list, he and his, like, accomplice in this thing. He had a list where he wanted to assassinate people, and I think Mandela was number one, and later on they changed it. Chris Hani was number one, and they assassinated him. So those three reasons, I feel like they are not, obviously they are important, but they don't explain the whole scenario for me. Because as I've said earlier on, like, I just like explained how those reasons are not enough for murdering him. I think maybe they might be the only reasons, I'm not sure. Maybe there is a deeper reason why he was killed. Because for me to make this video, I just wanted to like say, like, those reasons were not enough, and then provide reasons why, like, those reasons were not enough. But it could be that those are the only reasons why he was murdered. I personally feel like it's deeper than that. The thing is that the apartheid government has killed people before and tried to lie about it, or try to create their own story, their own version. They did it with Steve Biko. I think with Steve Biko, they said the police beat him up. No, I think they said he banged himself on the walls or something. But it turned out that the police actually murdered him, and they beat him up brutally. And he passed away. So they have tried to distort the truth before, and probably they did it again and again. So, like, in my view, I think maybe there is a deeper reason. I just don't know what it is. Maybe you'll tell me. I don't know. Maybe there is no deeper reason, but I'm not sure. Tell me, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.